I now have the pleasant task of introducing your guest speaker for the 4th annual Gilwell Club Breakfast Program. He is the CEO of Conexus Credit Union and is described as an energetic, passionate leader with more than 20 years of experience as a financial services professional in the credit union system and the cooperative movement. Prior to joining Conexus, he was the COO of Service Credit Union. He has been recognized by Credit Union Central Canada as the National Young Leader Award, and he is an advocate of lifelong learning, himself holding an MBA focused on management consulting and enterprise risk management. And he's also a graduate of the Queen's University Leadership Program. Our guest speaker has been actively involved in the community through the Lloydminster Regional Health Foundation, Lakeland College Advisory Board, United Way, Kinsman Club, and other development organizations. Finally, he's no stranger to Scouts, as a Scout himself from Comox, BC. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Eric Dillon.
So I think that there's some, as a representative of the business community, I think there's some very interesting parallels between Scouts and business, and I want to share with you maybe a little story about what I think that is. I think the definition of being business savvy or business smart has changed drastically over the last 5 years, and I think what it used to be was it was generally accepted that if you were IQ smart that you'd be successful in business. But I think the world's changed, and I think there's another concept emerging about emotional intelligence and what that means for business success. And I'm going to share with you some stories and some information that it's actually a much better predictor. Your emotional quotient or EQ intelligence is actually a much better predictor of business success than in fact IQ has been. And then I think I can tie that together very easily with what happens in the scouting world and through Scouts Canada. But I want to read you the definition of what emotional intelligence is. The capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. And so I just ask you a very quick test question. Do you think before you feel, or do you feel before you think? And I think there's a real important parallel there about how we're teaching young people about emotion and how to control emotion and give themselves the time and space to think and to think clearly and make rational decisions. There was a fellow by the name of Daniel Goleman, and he's done a bunch of work on this, and at the risk of boring over breakfast with psychology, I do want to share some information from his study. He studied 121 global companies, and he was trying to get to the essence of what makes successful leaders, not just in business, but in community organizations. And here's what he found, that of average employers across those 121 companies, they had mastered a certain set of skills, but for average employees, 50% of those skills were technical in nature, and 50% of those skills were related to emotional intelligence. If you moved up in terms of performance and were considered an above average or high performer, that ratio changed from 1/3 technical skills to 2/3 mastery of those things that are maybe more sensory or emotional. And the very best leaders across those 121 worldwide organizations, the ratio was even more pronounced. It was about 1/6 to 5/6. So again, of the skills the very best leaders in business had mastered, only 1/5 of those skills were considered technical vis-a-vis the business that they were in. And the other 5/6 of those skills were really around how you relate to people and how you relate to yourself. And I'll tell you what we think today as a local employer that employs 1,000 people across Saskatchewan. What we'll tell you today is IQ is what gets you hired, and it's accountable for only about 20% of the success you'll have in business. It's also relatively fixed and most important for working by yourself. But I'll tell you again today, as somebody that leads a business that operates across Saskatchewan, very little of what we do today is where we put a finance person in the dark room where they don't have to build a relationship with either one of our member owners, or perhaps a staff member, or a community, or a wonderful group like Scouts Canada. And I'll also tell you today that EQ is what gets you promoted. It's what's important and accountable for actually the majority of success in business. That it also can be developed. I've had lots of people in my career tell me that leaders are born and not developed, and I'll tell you, my view is that you're dead wrong. I think that those skills in leaders can be built, can be nurtured, can be taught, and can be coached. And I hope you're seeing the parallel that I think emerges between building world-class citizens and business leaders and Scouts Canada. I also think that EQ will be the most important factor about those people that are working in team environments. Well, every large-scale project that my organization is involved in today, and there are several, they typically involve cross-functional teams, working across geography, trying to understand perspectives and views from not just in front of their desk, but across the province. So I've tried to boil down the definition of what is emotionally intelligent into 4 categories and ask you to think about this in terms of yourself, particularly those young people here today from Scouts. The first one is, do you know yourself? Are you self-aware? So what does that mean? Are you able to assess yourself realistically? Do you know what you're good at and what you're not good at? Do you recognize how your feelings affect those around you? How well do you know yourself? The second thing I would tell you is that, can you manage yourself? So can you self-regulate, so to speak? And what does that mean? And again, imagine this from the scouting perspective and how we teach kids about these things. Can you control bad moods? Can you choose your words carefully? Can you avoid making very quick and hasty decisions? And can you create an environment of trust and fairness? Lastly, are you socially aware about your environment? Do you understand how the organization works? Can you sense how people are feeling? How people collaborate and share different views? And are you able to accept and synthesize what they're saying as opposed to immediately dismissing it? And importantly, can you bring conflict out into the open where it can be resolved? Also, do you manage relationships? Can you help others around you get better? Can you persuade and work with people with very different views than your own? The last thing I'll tell you I found in this research learning about great leaders was this issue about persistence. And I'll tell you 2 very quick stories that I use when I talk to young people, and certainly young leaders in our business. 2 very famous people that I'm sure you'll know, J.K. Rowling and Michael Jordan. J.K. Rowling, at the time she wrote her first book, was living on social assistance and approached 10 publishers before her first book was actually picked up. Can you imagine how she'd feel today if after the 9th no, she went back to social assistance? She's now worth north of $1 billion after hearing 10 no's. The second one was Michael Jordan. I'm a basketball player and I know what you're thinking. There's no way because he hardly stands up from behind the podium. But I was. And I'll tell you that I know Michael Jordan was actually cut from his junior high basketball team. The best player to ever play the game, in my view, was cut. And I know that the coach that cut him now makes millions of dollars speaking to people about why he cut him. And it wasn't that he didn't have the talent to play the game. It's that he couldn't relate to others around him. Interesting parallel. And I think there's lots to learn about persistence from those 2 stories. So to bring this kind of to a conclusion in terms of the lesson, I think you're sitting saying, well, so what? So this fellow from business is up talking about what we need to do as business leaders. But I would tell you that if you were to go and search saskjobs.ca, pick any job, do like internet roulette, and pick the first one that you see, and read the kinds of skills that it's asking of the people that it wants to find work for their organization. I think you'll see it says things like interpersonal skills, communication, relationship management, that you're empathetic, that you're creative, that you're self-confident. I don't know about you, but I remember hiking to a place in northern Vancouver Island through 5 days of rain, which is nice weather there. And I learned a lot about self-confidence walking in wet boots for 5 days. That you're ethical, and that you're committed to core values, to those things that are important. So I'd say that there's lots of activities that would teach young people basic skills and promote teamwork, but scouting clearly goes beyond that and encourages youth to have a deeper appreciation of themselves and also for service to others in their community. Scouting provides youth with a sense that they're important as individuals and human beings. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, scouting promotes activities that lead to personal accountability and higher self-esteem. As a very large employer in Saskatchewan, particularly in Regina, I can tell you those are exactly the skills that I read a few minutes ago that I'll be looking for as an employer for the next 10 years. Exactly the skills. The business of banking is very simple. I can teach you what you need to know in about 3 days, but I can't teach you how to relate to other human beings. That work is done by you in this room. So while I can say that your scouting experience will make you exceptional employees, and I'm happy about that, I'm even more happy that it will produce even better human beings and better people. People who are humble, people that care about the community, people that care about others as much as themselves, and people that do the right thing when today that's not always easy. I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the very committed volunteers for Scouting Canada. As a company whose employees last year contributed 33,000 hours of community service, we absolutely recognize the commitment that it takes to work with young people and build these very important skills to build the next generation of leaders. And as part of my research, I was reading lots about the successes of Scouting Canada, and I'll tell you, there's all kinds of information out there about 1 in 4 kids are part of either the scouting or the guiding movement. But what happens is when you get to the most senior leaders of business and civil and corporate leadership, I saw stats that was anywhere between 50 and 75% of those people had been through this kind of an environment. What does that tell you? It tells you there's a higher likelihood of success because you've gone out and invested in yourself and built those skills. And I think it's a testament to the volunteers that are here to help you do that. So thanks so much for having us. Have a fantastic scouting summer, and at Conexus, we're certainly very proud to be sponsoring such a worthwhile organization. Thank you very much.